think we are working on an audio issue for Jason real quick. Okay, cool. Jason's going to hop out real quick and work on some audio things. We clearly have video for him, but need to work on some audio issues. So everybody hang tight, and we'll be right back.
Hey guys, full audio problem. Is it working now?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, fantastic.
You got to love it when you do all the right things. You come on early, you test everything, and then you go live and it all breaks. Welcome to the life of a marketer or demand gen person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we'll give this another try to get this started. Clark, thank you so much for joining us today for Outbound 2.0. It's awesome to have you on. Just learned a little bit earlier. We're basically neighbors. You're out of northern Alabama. I'm out of Knoxville, Tennessee. Neither of which are known as bastions of tech. Although you were telling me that down in your area, cybersecurity is a pretty substantial thing, which I guess makes sense given the prevalence of government stuff down there around the space industry and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge Department of Defense contracting work that goes on here. Huge cybersecurity industry, and they're all over the place. There's tons of work here, and the area itself is just really great place to be. And not a lot of people realize that. Some people remember the space camps here, but not much else. And if anybody's old enough to remember that movie. Yeah, really cool area to be in. A lot of up and coming stuff.
Awesome. Well, we usually start off with a few kind of standard questions, but I have to ask the most important one. I was taking a look at your LinkedIn profile, getting caught up, and it says demand gen marketer, go to market specialist, and third thing. What's the third thing?
Exactly. I've been asked, like, what would you be doing if you weren't in like demand gen marketing and cybersecurity? And I went, I don't know. Third thing is really there, I guess, to generate some demand for myself. I suppose.
Have people ask questions like me
constantly, whether it be podcast host or hiring managers in a job interview, and everything in between. What is third thing? Exactly.
So how did you get involved in cybersecurity? Was it because you were in the location you are, or was it vice versa, or did it just happen to converge?
It was pretty serendipitous. I was at a point where I was working at a marketing agency, so I've been on that side and became kind of disillusioned in on that side of things, and didn't really know where I was wanting to go. I've always romanticized cybersecurity, specifically red teaming and penetration testing, getting paid to test vulnerabilities and hack into things and do physical engagements and try to find weaknesses in security, like on site. Like, I'm a huge Mr. Robot fan. Like, all of that was just so cool to me. And so I started to realize that a lot of the soft skills that we as marketers have are the same. There are a lot of parallels there between soft skills and in cybersecurity. They do recon and try to gain information about a target, for example. Well, we build personas, and the parallels just keep going from there. So a oddly enough, I applied to be a pen tester with zero experience whatsoever at a cybersecurity firm up here. And I wrote a huge email that just highlighted all those similarities between the soft skills and what I could potentially bring to the table. And like, I cannot write Python scripts to save my life, but I guarantee you I can social engineer my way into somebody's server room, you know. Um, and so, understandably, I got ghosted. Like no response whatsoever. You know, of course, I totally get it. However, 2 years went by, and I get a random phone call out of nowhere from the person that was the CEO of that company that I applied for. He had started his own security awareness training startup, and got a phone call, and he says, I've been thinking about that email for 2 years. I want you to come run my marketing department. And so it was off to the races. That's how I got into cybersecurity. So,
That's
you know,
awesome.
I knew that I was going to get into it eventually, one way or the other. But yeah, it just happened to be on the marketing end.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, out of professional curiosity, because I just came out of a company last year where we were targeting, devs, engineers, stuff like that, which was a interesting experience for me because most of my background and career had been selling marketing products on the go-to-market side of things. And so, would love to hear just out of my own, professional curiosity, what are some of the ins and outs and unique things, challenges around trying to market and do demand gen into that ICP and that persona?
I like to say that if you can make it as a marketer in cybersecurity, you can make it anywhere, absolutely anywhere,
Yeah.
because cybersecurity marketers, we're playing on hard mode. You know, think about your email campaigns, like your nurture campaigns. It's imagine having a marketing campaign that you're launching, but there are rules. Okay, one rule is no one's going to click a link on anything. A link, regardless of where it is, you can't send someone a link. They will not click on it. You can't call anyone. They
Nope.
don't want to talk to you at all.
If you can even find their number.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about world-class experts at hiding their own information, and cybersecurity experts that are so well versed in defending against the kind of legal cyber attacks that we as marketers are launching, trying to get them to click on something, right? And so you're not gonna scrape their info off Zoom info or something like that, you know. It's very difficult, and I found that one of the best ways to actually get in touch with them is just to inject a little bit of self-awareness and let them know, like, look, you know the game, we know the game. Like, let's cut the crap and let's just get to it, and injecting a little bit of empathy and letting them know that yeah, there are so many ambulance chasers in this industry that the second you change your title to CISO, like you're going to be just bombarded, and it's absurd, you know. And you take that mentality and you put it in the copy on your landing pages, on your paid ads, you know, and just really focus on tone and messaging to let them know that, like, no, we're here, we're whatever you need, like just providing. And I know you'll get this in demand gen terms. I'm gonna give you so much value that by the time I actually ask for something, then there's no way you'll say no. Like, just be the support person, give as much value away as humanly possible, and don't ask for anything in return. You know, it's a lot of the old ways, the tried and true tactics of um, traditional marketing campaigns for this particular ICP. Throw it out the window. Don't even try. It's not going to work.
So you mean being vulnerable, honest, and providing value actually works?
Light bulb. Yeah. Yeah. Imagine that. I mean, and it's something that in cybersecurity, and I've seen this in other tech companies as well, that everybody gets so paralyzed by features, and you know, no one cares about your new feature launch. You know, what are you actually solving? What are the benefits of this? Like, and depending on who you're talking to, whether it's like a DevSecOps team that, you know, needs to save time, or an actual CISO that, you know, doesn't actually have time to save time, you know, what are you doing for them? And it's, you know, it's something that we really got to start paying attention to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what you illustrated there is one of the big things that we've gotten away from, and I think chickens are coming home to roost a little bit. Of uh, Everybody started focusing on tactics. Everybody started focusing on like volume and automation and activity, and we got away from like, how do we actually provide value? How do we actually speak to somebody in a forthright manner? How do we actually focus on listening to them and what they need? And I think whenever you have to actually hold yourself accountable and you're in a scenario where like that other shit doesn't fly, then you got to get back down to best practices and get back down to what has always worked. There's a reason why we got away from it. It's because that shit's hard. Like
Right.
it takes effort, it takes mental energy. Like it is not something where you can go and just put a butt in the seat and say, have at it. Like you have to actually be able to work through these things. You've got to know how to do it. And you've got to spend a lot of time like really obsessing over, how do we do this and how do we do this right? And how do we learn lessons from what we're doing and all of that? It isn't easy. But if you've been in a space trying to sell into somebody who's unforgiving like that, or if you've been with like a bootstrap startup where like you don't have venture backing, you don't have
Right.
any wiggle room, like you have to straight up be a profitable, viable company. Like you don't have a lot of room to be like, yeah, we're going to go do this other thing that, we don't know whether it's
Yeah.
going to play into revenue or not. Or like, hey, we want to build a world-class brand and have everybody revere us for the quality of our content. But it's not actually tied to trying to, talk about the product or the pain or anything like that. It's just like, we got
Right.
to figure out that people look to and like to listen to. And it's sort of those vanity things that sort of got away with
Yeah.
people. And hey, we're just going to assume the model is going to work if we put enough volume behind it.
Right. And too often, and especially with demand gen marketers, we're very rarely afforded the luxury of getting our own function up to speed before the faith is lost. You know, there far too often there's not enough runway to actually create a brand, much less. I mean, like we were talking about earlier, like as demand gen marketers, we have our hand down farther down the funnel than anyone else, and we do want revenue. We do want meetings booked. We do want uh, SQOs. We net new. You name it. Any other KPI that you could come up with, we want it all. However, that takes time. And when and this leads to a lot of marketers getting so burned out on the fact that they know what they have to do, they know what their actual function is, and when companies are posting for directors of demand gen or heads of demand gen, they show that they're focused on the fact that they have faith in bringing that on as a function. However, what ends up happening is when we're not given enough time to build a true demand engine, then senior leadership's going to start sweating. They're going to want leads and MQLs, however loosely anyone wants to define what that actually is. And yeah, the requirements for being an MQL just get loosened more and more and more, because they've got to hit a number, and your SDRs, your BDRs, everybody else hates you because there's garbage leads, and before you know it, you forgot what you were actually there to do in the first place. And it's the fact that the people that tend to be able to do the most end up getting tasked with the most, and it's just not a good place. It's not a good place. And that's one of the reasons that I actually started talking about this on LinkedIn, is just, can we just take a step back and breathe for a minute and talk about what's actually going on with marketers, like specifically in B2B? and this is why I was kind of so outspoken about the echo chamber as a whole. Like, whew, I know, I get that everyone's terrified about the job market, but let's deal with what we're dealing with, like right now, like as marketers, as a whole, and see if we can actually take care of each other, because there's a lot of crap going on right now.
Absolutely. And yeah, the post that you were hitting on was one of the things that really keyed us into wanting to have you on. But before we jump into that, I definitely want to talk through some of those points that you were making there. But we like to to kick these off with a question: debunk a myth about demand gen. So you mentioned a lot of sort of platitudes and supposed words of wisdom out there and stuff like that. But let's debunk a myth around it.
Ooh, a myth. Wow, that's there are so many. It's okay. We're not in sales. We're not salespeople.
100%. How have you seen that play out in your career? God knows I have.
Ooh, a lack of clarity cross-functionally as to where cross-functionally there tends to be a game of jump rope that happens with the boundaries of what the actual function of a demand gen marketer is versus where sales goes. I like I said, any of those sales KPIs that you want to measure demand gen on, great. It's we demand gen marketers as a whole, like, we're invested in the long-term growth of the company, which is why we can't be measured on things like leads or whatever, just something to fill the pipe with garbage, right? Like, we actually do want money to generate. However, I think that there have been some historically some crossing of boundaries in terms of the function and how involved we are with sales as a whole. I love training. I love sales enablement. I love giving the assist and the alley-oop and letting people throw it down. I love that. But when it comes to actual KPIs, I think there's some conversations that need to be had in terms of what to actually be measured on, and where we stop and where they begin. I think that before you even go into a role, like if you're being interviewed for a demand gen job or position, that's a conversation you need absolute clarity on before you go in.
Absolutely. What are some of those KPIs that you think are particularly appropriate, salient, and what are some of the ones that you're like, why in the hell are we even putting this on the table?
Oh, it's who all's here? Who all's in here? Do it. We're alive, right?
Please do not hesitate to be controversial.
Yeah. I think that anything actually measured in dollars is questionable, right? Because opportunities, yes. Pipeline growth, yes. But when it actually comes to like closed deals, that's kind of where I draw the line.
And is that because demand gen people, marketers, are so far away from the actual closed deal that there's too many layers of BDR that sets the meeting, does qualification,
right.
AE that takes it through to the finish line? All of that is that the aspect of it that concerns you?
Yes. Yeah. And I really like the way you were able to dive into exactly what I meant by that. Yeah. Like, once there comes a point where we're so far removed from it that it's not really fair to be measured on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, however you define opportunities, or whatever you want to call that meeting booked is, like, I think there needs to be a really, really clear handoff, and where our responsibility ends and theirs begins. And I would say the too far point is actually like closed one.
Yeah, I mean, anytime I've been held accountable all the way down to that actually closed one revenue figure, it's been with the caveat and the need that I am either, quasi managing or working in tight coordination with the CRO, the VP of sales, whatever,
Right.
around what those reps are doing. And so, I wind up being the one that's like, oh, hey, this person's, close rate is significantly below, or hey, I'm seeing meetings getting dropped, or we're not having follow up with opportunities. And so, like, I wound up doing a quasi sales manager role in that because I'm having, my feet are held to the flame as far as what revenue is and how many of these we're closing and how much of that was qualified and all of that. And it's like, okay, if you're going to do that, but I'm going to make damn sure those reps are doing what they need to do. And we're going to have to work in tandem on that if that's where we're going to be at.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, in that situation, if you're in that role, if you're in that deep, then are you a marketer?
I mean, it's a open question, and I think it's a great segue into one of the things that you posed in that LinkedIn piece. What in the hell do all of these titles, scare quotes roles that marketers have out there? There's so much variability in what in the hell people are thinking about whenever they post a title. So one, like, do people even know what they're talking about? If they do, then what are kind of the distinctions? What are appropriate distinctions and roles within this?
Yeah, this is honestly one thing that bugs me a lot, is because a lot of marketers miss opportunities because they're scared to apply for something, not knowing that something between product marketing, growth marketing, lifecycle marketing, demand gen marketing, all of those job descriptions, it's reached a critical mass where everything is running together so much that if you pull a job or job description from each one of those titles, 99% of it is going to be the exact same thing. And it's a demand gen marketer may not apply for that product marketing position just because it says product marketing, but if you'll open it up, it's exactly what you do.
Yeah.
And it's not always going to be that. There are organizations that know the nuances between a product marketing function and a demand gen function, or growth marketing and life cycle. However, for the most part, what I've seen, and before I posted that, I pulled so many job descriptions and just fed them into I can't remember the website, but you just feed a bunch of job descriptions into the system, and it pulls out all the uh, gives you a word cloud, right? And the word cloud was a lot smaller than you would think it would be. The overlap there is just ridiculous, and I don't know if it's whether it's rather that they're put together by HR, they're just doing a research on just B2B marketing jobs, or whatever. I'm not really sure what it is. But that all leads me to just say that check out a listing first. Do your due diligence, do your research, and don't be afraid to open up a job description and apply for it just because you think it's not something that you could handle. Because for the most part, like, marketers are marketers. If you're a good one, then you can pretty much do it all. And what you'll find out is that a lot of these roles are 95% the exact same thing. And I think it's a shame that people get caught up in calling something else when, yeah, it's gotten kind of ridiculous.
So if you were CMO and you were building a team from scratch, what would be the titles and roles? With the assumption that you actually have a distinction between these, that you would
I like this game.
that you would need to have in order to execute and build that world-class team.
What's my runway? Do I have time? Do I think that'd be
all else being equal, you've got what you need. Like what
like, is this magical Christmas land?
Right. This is go build your dream team.
Cool. probably one product, one product, one mops, and 3 or 4 demand gen marketers, and that'd probably be it.
And for those that don't know, what it's mops?
Operations. So handling all your hooking up the wires to make sure everything is flowing correctly between your HubSpot, your CRM, your Salesforce, whatever, all your workflows and automation and etc.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Yeah, obviously, that's leaving out some of the major ones that a lot of people would bring in early. In particular, one that immediately leaps to mind is, somebody in charge of brand or corporate marketing or content. So where would those responsibilities fit within the structure?
So I would probably put content under product and brand under demand.
That works. Yeah, I mean, especially given the number of times I've butted heads within that,
Right.
I've got, and then, do each of those roll up directly to the CMO? Do you have any hierarchy amongst those themselves?
How would I put this together? You'd probably have a demand lead and kind of taking point on that with a couple other uh, folks that are executing. Mops probably lives on an island, unfortunately, but reports directly CMO or maybe a VP under that. But yeah, for the most part, I'd be running pretty lean and mean with those 4 to 5 folks, and that'd be it.
Cool. Awesome. So, one of the things that, in fact, that's what we titled this session with is the echo chamber is making us dumber.
Yeah.
What what do we hear reverberating within this echo chamber that's particularly troublesome?
That everyone needs to be building their brand. That over and over again. And I mean, look, I will fully admit I'm appearing on a podcast right now. That's a little hypocritical of me to say, obviously, but um one of the things that I keep seeing over and over again is the same people commenting on all the big content creators stuff, hoping to just leech some of that audience for their own personal brand. I've been guilty of it before, but like it hits me like a truck when I see that, because I started to realize that I get that the job market is what it is right now, and everybody's looking for some sort of community and place to commiserate, and to really try to figure out what's going on in the market together. But paying attention to what everyone's posting on LinkedIn, and then subsequently trying to grow your own LinkedIn following, it's not making you better at your job. And when you're spending all that time just in the echo chamber where you're seeing the same advice over and over again, or that here's how to grow your email open rate by 0.3% by this afternoon. Like, no, stop following all these people. Stop, like, unfollow me. I want you to unfollow me. I want you to go to your ICP. I want you to go to your buyers, and I want you to follow all those people and find out what they're talking about. That's who you need to be paying attention to, not me, not anybody else, not the huge creators out there, because do you think that they want your following to grow? Are they really invested in yours? Like, it's this weird place to where I think that there are some people that are starting to call it out. It's like, why do we need a bunch of selfies about like what like I don't understand what the play is there for content creators in marketing. I don't understand what the end game is. At the very beginning, I was talking about providing value. Where's the value?
Yeah, I mean, every time I think we might be learning a hard lesson whenever it comes to this, and I mean, like, let's face it, the reason why tech was the space that got hit first and hardest whenever it came to layoffs and everything that's going on right now is because of a focus on tactics and quick wins and hacks. And it's, it's a volume play, and all we got to do is go out and put enough people in there and equip them with enough tech, and we're gonna train them on the latest and greatest little tricks of the trade or ways to hack the LinkedIn algorithm or whatever. And call me naive. I was like, oh hey, this time we're gonna learn some lessons. We're gonna open our eyes, stuff like that. Unfortunately, what I'm seeing is just a pivot to new tactics and new areas and new hacks. It's not learning a lesson. Like, that's the problem. The lesson that seems to be learning, or that we seem to be learning and internalizing, is like, okay, it stopped working there. Now let's go figure out what the newest hacks and tactics are in some other flavor or some other angle or whatever. And you wonder if or when we're ever going to get back to a place of, how do you do this and actually do it well, do it right, provide value? Like, when, tech is such a double-edged sword. It can enable you to do so much in both directions. But what I think we started with was like, guess what? It's kind of hard to do it the right way. And so it's not autopilot. It's not like, hey, I'm just going to go and rinse and repeat. Like, you've got to pay attention. You got to care. You got to be passionate about it. Which leads us into the next one out of there, which is like, a lot of us are getting burnt out. And if you're getting burnt out, it's hard to have the energy and it's hard to have the passion to go and do that. What do you see driving that? You touched on it, a little bit of like, we're being asked to do too much. But are there other things that you see? And then relative to us being asked to to do too much, obviously we can try and short circuit some of that in like an interview process and whatever, but like, that doesn't keep a bait and switch from happening. And really then for those that are already in there, most of us are looking at situations where teams are getting cut. And so it's, the internal dynamics that are driving the ask and the need of too much seem to only be accelerating. So, what's your advice for, people out there facing that? And then are there other things that are leading to or driving that burnout?
I wish so much that I could say that what I'm about to say would actually work. But I don't know that many folks are in a position to where it actually would, because here's what happens. You're on a team, half that team gets cut. That didn't get rid of the work that has to be done. Who's going to get that work? You are. And what are you supposed to do about that? Are you supposed to do what you should do to take care of yourself and your own mental health, which is set boundaries and, talk to them about the actual scope of your work and what you were hired to do? Can you do that? I don't know. I wish I could tell you that you could. Not everyone's going to be in a position where they can, just like I said. That's one of the really tricky situations that marketers are in right now. And that's why we're exhausted. It's why we're burned out. It's why mental health really needs to be talked about more in sales and in marketing, is because there are so many people out there, and I don't want to disparage those that have been laid off, right? Because that's pure hell. Trust me, I know, and I can certainly relate. But there are also the ones that didn't get laid off that are staying up until midnight just trying to keep the lights on, that are getting burned out, that are not getting to spend time with their families, that are not getting to do anything. Like, they're losing their passion for their own work. And when that happens, everything else goes to shit. It's a shame. It's a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it creates a lose-lose across the board. Like, right. The organization loses. Certainly that member of the team loses. Their, extension, their family, friends, stuff like that, they lose. But at the end of the day, like, everybody's so terrified. They're terrified of losing their job, so they're not going to speak up. Their manager's terrified of losing their job. They're not going to speak up. all the way up to the senior leadership within the team are terrified of the board, the investors, the venture capitalists, whatever. And so it's just, from top to bottom, you wind up in a place where it's like, okay, like, well, how are we going to dig out of this? And unfortunately, what I'm seeing is too much of the time, the things people are doing to address those concerns are actually self-defeating. Like, they're making the issue a bigger problem. You're sitting there looking at it, it's like, okay, you just fired like 10,000 people, and half of that's your go-to-market team.
Right.
But you're now going to somehow still make your targets. You're still going to somehow
explain to me how that's going to happen.
And revenue is like that. How does that add up? It's like, I get it. Like, those teams have become bloated in a lot of cases and stuff like that. But the problem is not really the size of the team. The problem is the efficiency and the effectiveness of the team. And whenever you're getting rid of, in a lot of the cases, the people that could actually get that dialed in and leveled up, it becomes really hard. Because, I mean, the dirty little secret is those people that tend to have that experience tend to have the higher salaries. And so when you're trying to cut costs, guess who your first target is?
Right. Exactly.
So it's like, oh, hey, we've still got half our sales team left. Let's forget they've got less than a year's experience underneath them for the majority of them on average. And now we got nobody to direct them as far as how to do this right.
Because you cut your demand gen team.
Right.
Yeah. So there's nothing coming in, other than just garbage leads that they don't know how to work. They don't know, it truly is lose across the board.
Yeah, and I mean, I've said for a long time, all the way down to talking to people that were thinking about, like, okay, I know I want to get into business. Like, where do I want to go into? Is it marketing? I've warned people for a long time, and I mean, this has been going on for most of my career. It's not a recent thing out of what's going on in the market. Marketers, demand gen people tend to be some of the least appreciated people in the company that are simultaneously asked to do the most.
Be still, my heart. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. You're absolutely correct. It goes. I think it goes without saying, and you're absolutely correct. I mean, too often, it's certainly one of those functions that are taken for granted a lot, and you don't understand the impact that those particular functions have until they're gone. Especially in terms of like the quality of your opportunities that come in, and it's rough.
Well, and I think a lot of what drives it, and I've yet to figure out exactly why, is that everybody seems to think they can be an amazing marketer, no matter what their background is, no matter what they've done before. And so it's like, hey, this isn't that hard. Like, a blue button on the left side looks better. That's clearly where it needs to be. It's like, is it? I don't know.
That's marketing. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So go ahead.
That's certainly one of those things that not only demand gen marketers, but marketers as a whole, regardless of the size of your org, it's always been one of those functions that everybody thinks they can do. Everybody thinks they have and that really speaks to the misunderstanding of marketers as a function, right? And that's one thing that I honestly don't see going away, unfortunately. Again, another conversation you need to have up front.
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely something to have up front. And I mean, I think there's part of it's just the conception or overconfidence that a lot of people have about it. But also have to think, like, a huge part of it, maybe even the bulk of it, is on us. Like, what are we not doing in showing and conveying the value and the challenge and the expertise that goes into, what an excellent demand gen person does?
Excellent point. Because this is another thing that you see a lot in the echo chamber is don't work for a CEO that doesn't get marketing. Everybody's seen that. I think that's garbage advice, and really just kind of shirks responsibility, right? Like if there's anybody top to bottom of the org that doesn't understand what we do, whose fault is that? Like that's our fault. in my opinion, have those conversations that where you can actually bring data to the table that shows what your function does, like hard evidence. And if you're a marketer, if you're a good marketer, then you should be able to market outside your organization and inside your organization.
Right.
You should be able to create demand for yourself.
Your job is literally to persuade people.
Exactly. That's one of the
something wildly ironic about the fact that we struggle to do that internally.
I've said this several times. Like, we need to make ICPs internally as well. It's one of those things that you don't realize you're going to have to do until you have to do it, which is market yourself internally or your function or on behalf of your team. You're absolutely right. Like, our job is to persuade people, however that may be. And being in cybersecurity, to all the marketers out there, you want to just add a layer of awesomeness to your abilities. Go talk to some pen testers and learn social engineering. Learn that the art of persuasion. Tons of books and marketing about it. Like, really hone that in, because not only will it help you market outbound, but it will also help you internally. Because you're right. There are a lot of situations to where people just don't understand what you do, and you have to come to the table with not only hard proof, but a really strong case that plays to their pain points internally, just like you would anywhere else.
Yep. And it's extremely ironic that oftentimes the more talented and the more successful you are at doing it, the harder that is to do internally, because they're not seeing all that goes into it. Like, they're not seeing, like, holy shit, this is hard. If you've got somebody that struggles to like launch a webinar and they get a webinar off the ground and they get 20 people through, it's like, hallelujah, look at what this person did. If you're running those weekly and nobody's paying any attention to it because it just runs like clockwork and you're sending 150 people through every time, it's like, hey, we know that thing's happening over here. Like, it
and they only pay attention to it when it stops.
Right. Yeah. So I think, an interesting implication of it, and I've been coming, more and more around to this as a standard piece of what my teams need to include, is somebody on that data analyst, orchestration side of things, in order to both enable what I'm doing from a demand gen standpoint and be able to take that kind of that next level. Because at the end of the day, I think the most critical thing right now in going forward is actually being able to identify and get to true intent signaling. So I'm not talking like black boxes like Bombora or anything like that, like actual true intent signaling. And data, of course, is at the key of that, but data is also at the key of being able to demonstrate and prove what you're doing internally, because guess what? A lot of this stuff is hard to actually get to. Story I tell all the time, whenever, I was at Astronomer last time that I was running a BDR team, there was questions like, hey, is this going to work? And I was like, all right, let's give this a try. Let's only have them go after, in conjunction, our named accounts that we're focusing on from a demand gen standpoint. The problem, of course, is that most of us don't like talk to people. So it doesn't matter how effective those BDRs are, they're going to come through the website and fill out a form. And so like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, these guys are effective. They're moving the needle, but nobody would believe me, because it's like, well, they're not replying to their emails. They're not replying to their LinkedIn messages. They're just coming in as inbounds. So it's like, why do we even have them in there? I was like, okay, let me show you. I'm going to run this campaign just purely from the demand gen side, and then I'm going to run the same thing, different accounts, but based off the same ICP, the same intent signals, all of that stuff, and have the reps just do it on their own. And it was like, oh, holy crap. We convert 2x on these named accounts whenever we do it together. And then the people that come in through things like ads, where we can actually track a cost on it, it comes in at a third to half the cost as it does whenever we do it just purely on its own. It's like, okay, did it, but like, it takes somebody that can do that data analytics side of things to be able to go and, one, even figure out how do you create a test like that, two, track the data, and then be able to turn it into something that's consumable internally.
Right.
So yeah, didn't know your thoughts on that. Where do you see the direction going in that? Do you see data analysts, people on that side of the equation, things like CDPs becoming more and more integral and prevalent within it? Kind of essential pieces of the stack.
You say essential, yeah. I think it's getting to the point where it's gonna have to be. There are so many things that. And this might kind of go back to the whole myths around demand gen. We talk about some of the more nebulous things like the dark funnel and stuff like that, but so much of it is actually data driven that it stands to reason that it's going to have to be integrated like fully within that function on a more regular basis, because like you said, when it comes to testing, and this may speak to like folks not having the time that they really deserve to run these kind of tests. Like if they're given the amount of time to actually like do a POC or test, then it would absolutely show that this is going to be integral moving forward. And I think the teams that actually are allotted those resources to run those kind of tests and actually back up their intuition with data, they're going to be the ones that win. But it's not everybody's going to be in a position to actually have the luxury of doing that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's to the point. I mean, I teach a class as an adjunct at the University of Tennessee, and when I talk to students in the business school that are interested in going in sort of this direction, I have to impress upon them. And I mean, this is also part of the issue, I think, is most of the schools aren't up to speed on this either. I was like, you need to spend time in statistics. You need to spend time understanding how do you analyze this stuff? How do you do the analytics side of things? How do you actually put together a test that's viable? Do you actually understand the law of large numbers and what it is to be statistically significant? Like, these are things that are essential to the job these days, especially as we're moving forward. And I think we're sort of dropping the ball very early on in this process, and then of course it continues on. Well, we've spent a lot of time on sort of what's wrong and where things are going in a negative direction. What are you excited about? What are some of the things that's like really gotten you going, or something fun that you've sort of stumbled upon, or like really was an effective thing that you've done recently?
So you talk about data analytics. And I know this has been beaten into the ground, and I actually posted about this. I think last week I said that Chat GPT is not going to ruin marketing. Marketers are going to ruin Chat GPT. And that pretty much happened in 48 hours. Everybody was tired of hearing about it. So that came to fruition. But honestly, I'm extremely excited about AI tools moving forward. Really, really am. I think that the folks that are kind of dismissive about it are just the ones that have seen, here are 10 tips to write better hooks for your personal brand on the echo chamber. Anything that revolves around Chat GPT or any Dolly, any other generative AI stuff that's just feeding into the echo chamber, that's what's causing people to just lose interest quickly. We'll get into the trough of disillusion, but I think that there are some really exciting things that are going to happen. If you start looking at it from the data analytics point of view, I mean, you essentially have a free data analyst if you can run it correctly, like ChatGPT, for example. You can feed so much information to it and just ask it questions in plain English to give you insights that you'd be a week or two out just trying to get like actionable insights from. I'm really pumped. I've if you see that it's at capacity, I'm the one throwing my keyboard across the room because I'm on it constantly.
So is it primarily the generative AI that you're excited about? I mean, obviously AI is a ridiculously broad category with all kinds of broken promises and
Right.
what it can do and all of that. So is it primarily the generative side of it, like
Yeah.
ChatGPT? And then what are some of the primary use cases that you see that are going to be really effective with this? Because I mean, obviously, we've already seen people go in all kinds of terrible directions with it.
Right. Yeah, I think that um, everybody's focusing on prompting and what you should actually be telling it to do, and you need to tell it to be an expert in this first. Like there's tons of tips on that crap, all over the place. And what I really see as being an actual use case is feeding information and getting just in plain English, what should I do? That's it. Tell me without having to stare at 47 different spreadsheets for 3 hours and until I go blind. In 7 seconds, you can tell me exactly what I need to know. And I think if you approach it from the point of a productivity tool rather than something that, like, I just don't want to write any blogs this week, write my ad copy that's not the way to use it. It's just not. You can use it kind of as a jumping off point, sure, but no, I don't think it's going to replace anybody, at least not for the time being. But using it to analyze data is what I'm most excited for, and would probably be the biggest use case right now.
That's awesome because it's definitely not what you hear people talking about in the news whenever it comes to this.
Right.
It's all the other side of the equation that you were talking about. Like I can't tell you an article or a newscast that I've heard that mentioned, much less dove into the analytical side of it. Everybody's talking about, hey, this is going to displace writers, or this is going to, absolutely ruin students. Which, by the way, is one of the funny ones. Whenever I had my first class a couple of weeks, we were talking through Chat GPT, and I was like, let me make clear to you guys, have at it. If you want to try and use that to write your paper for me,
good luck.
By all means. And the only thing I'm going to say is if you somehow get an A on it, I want you to raise your hand and say that's what you did, because I want you to come up here and tell us how you did it, what you fed to it, because it's not going to be as simple as like, write me a paper on this topic. Like,
right.
You're not going to get an A if you do that. You might get a C. I'll give you that. And if that's all that you're aiming for, like, you might come in there. But
right.
If you want to do better than that, like, you're going to actually have to get fairly sophisticated with what you do with this thing. And I was like, if that's what you want to spend your time doing instead of writing the paper, I was like, by all means, like I will support you. I will encourage you to do that. I just want to learn what you did if you go that direction.
Yeah, I think that if you leave it kind of open-ended and just if you feed it, if you go to your Google Analytics or you go to your Google Ads and just take all of that data from as far back as just last year to date, for example, and just feed it and say, you're an expert data analyst, and just start there. You're an expert data analyst, give it your data, and then just start talking to it like you would a human. What do you notice? What jumps out at you? What information can I get in terms of human behavior? And I think making the connection between data informing user behavior for marketers is going to be the biggest thing.
And you know what's funny? And I say this every time somebody throws something out there that I'm like, holy shit, that's a good idea. My reaction is like, God damn, how did I not think of this? So thanks for giving me one of those today. And the very first thing I'm going to do after I get off this is go talk to my growth analyst, Sandra, and say, we got to start doing this. Like, I want to see what we can do whenever we pull this up. So that's excellent advice and an insight that I hadn't even had, because I'll be a first one to admit, I think 3 times I've tried to get in there and use it, and every time it's maxed out. So like, I've actually not gotten my hands on it yet.
Yeah, people are complaining about like, oh, they're going to a paid model. Yeah, here's my card.
Please,
take it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Don't care whatsoever. Like, this is so insanely powerful, and if people, like I said, if you're expecting to just have a free tool to write you some hooks for LinkedIn, great. The marketers that are going to win are going to look at it as a $20 a month data analyst that informs user behavior. That's where you're going to win.
Yeah, and I mean, the use case for it, if you do it well and do it sophisticated, is because I mean that's the hard part. That is the really hard part. And I was having conversations with my analyst this week. I was like, I need you paying attention to the anomalies, the things that we need to look at. I was like, loop me in. I can help you do the investigation. I can help you do the testing. I can help you come up with hypotheses for what's driving it. I need you to find those things that we need to look at.
Right.
And so if you can move, the analyst and the, growth marketers and stuff like that further downstream where they're really spending their time and attention on like, all right, what's actually going on here? How can we fix it? How can we level it up? What are the implications? Stuff like that. And away from just like trying to troll the data and figure out what in the world in there to even start paying attention to begin with. Holy crap, what a game changer that will be, and how much more effective
Right.
in that capacity.
And the interesting thing is that when you're using something like ChatGPT, I've done this over the last couple of days. Is once you feed it all of these large data sets, you can ask it in plain English, "What looks weird to you?"
That's
You ask it,
amazing.
and it will say, "Hey, this doesn't seem to make sense along this X, Y, and Z. This should be happening. It's not." And then it's conversational. Just talk to it like you're talking to an expert data analyst.
Okay, great. What do you see here? So like you can have it go look at and test your hypothesis. I mean, I spent a couple hours this week chasing breadcrumbs and trying to connect these dots. And most of it was like, all right, I got to go into this platform and I've got to go configure this report and I've got to go compare what's there to what's over on this other side. And it's like, if I've got something I just feed all that data into and start asking questions, it's like, I mean, it's my dream team. It's like, oh, hey, I can just bounce ideas off of something.
Right.
Somebody else is going to go do the legwork and give me the answer to it.
So, and then from there, like next level is once it has access to all of that data and all of that information, then you go, write me a Python script that is a predictive algorithm that accounts for this, and this. Tell me my churn. Tell me this. Tell me ROI. Tell me retention. And just it'll do it. It'll just write it right there, like code that you can just plug in and done.
Well,
Nuts. It'll be predicting the future based on your own data.
Well, I don't care about anybody else listening. This has been incredibly eye-opening and illuminating to me, because these are use cases for it that were not even on my radar. And like I said, I'm literally going to run straight from here to go talk to a couple of team members about how do we actually go operationalize this and get this into practice. Cool. We're coming up on the end of our time. Before we wrap, let everybody know how they get in touch with you. Where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, Clark Barron on LinkedIn. Yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to connect. I'm actually getting ready to start something where I take Sundays and just kind of having not necessarily in office hours, but just jump in a call if you got something to work on, or if you just want to vent, if you just want to complain, if you just want to get something off your chest and you need somebody that just gets it, like, yeah, let's talk about it. Especially marketers in particular, like it's rough out there. We got to take care of each other. So yeah, feel free to follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm there a lot more than I'd like to admit.
Awesome. Well, Clark, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. I will definitely be following up with you. It's been fantastic to meet you, and I hope everybody else had an enjoyable episode. And we will see you next week.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.